Okay, Coach, I just recently learned that you're not originally an Oklahoma girl. Is
I
that
am,
right?
actually.
You are?
I
Oh,
am.
break that down for me. Where's
I
the
am.
beginning?
I'm originally from Okemah, Oklahoma, which is about an hour, southwest of here. So, yeah, grew up on a farm. Farm girl, lived about 5 miles outside of Okemah.
Oh,
So, yeah.
man, somebody must have given me some bad intel. So what was the upbringing like in Okemah in your day?
Well, I went to a K through 8 school first, Bearden, and that was really, really nice. And I wouldn't change those days for anything. I grew up on a farm. We farmed crops like corn, grew all of our foods, vegetables, things like that. Had pigs, cows, horses, you name it, and had the chores,
Yeah,
so it was
sure.
just, it was just a slow pace life. But, I tell my kids all the time, I wish you guys could go back and just experience my life for a week and see just how slow it was. And we had to be creative with, things that we did because my family wasn't rich or we didn't have a lot of money. So we had to be creative with, games and entertainment. I had 4 older brothers, so
Oh, wow.
that was, I grew up tough.
Sure
I
you
had to be
did.
tough. So it was good. I wouldn't change anything about it.
One thing my dad always tells me is that whenever he was a kid, and he's got you by a mile in terms of his years, but he said we weren't aware of our socioeconomical situation. When you said y'all didn't have much, did you know that then, or is that in hindsight?
That's in hindsight. I didn't understand that at the time, and I don't think I really understood it until probably when I became a parent, because we always had what we needed. We always had food on the table. We always had clothes. Our clothes were always clean, and so I didn't. And now that you say that, I had a friend in high school. My senior year said, "You're just spoiled brat." And I thought.
Really?
No, I said, and I was thinking to myself, no, I don't think I'm that way. I've just been given the things that I've needed and not the things that I've wanted. And,
Sure.
so no, it took me a while to really kind of grasp that. But yeah.
Did the toughness come from just your brothers, or did you get some of that from the parents too?
Oh, I got it from parents too. My grandparents, my grandparents, my dad's mom and dad, they lived about 50 yards from us.
Oh,
and
man.
so, when mom and dad was working, we were always there. We could go back and forth. We kind of had a trail between our house that we would go back and forth. And every day, the school bus would drop us off right next to my grandmother's house, and she'd always have a snack for us and things like that. So they're huge, and they're now, even though they're deceased, I still don't want to disappoint them because of all the things that they instilled in me as far as work ethic, being loyal, being committed, just being honest, being a good person. And so I think I got some of my toughness from them as well, and my parents, because my parents raised us to earn everything that we got, just to work for everything that you want, and hopefully you're rewarded with your hard work.
I tell people all the time, if you were blessed to know your grandparents, oh, that's a big win.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you something. Anytime I went over either one of my grandmother's houses, I knew one thing: I was going to eat, no matter whether I had eaten
That's
before
true.
I came or not. Now,
Yes.
I got another parental question I want to throw at you, because this is not based on anything statistical, but it's like I hear a lot of growing up stories from people, and we laugh and we joke about how rough our parents may have been on us, or some of those whippings that were epic. And I always wonder, was there ever a moment where your parents let you know that they love you? Did you feel loved by your parents, or was it all just tough?
No, I always knew my parents loved me, especially my dad, because my mom was probably more of the disciplinarian in our house.
Same.
And so, we always knew, sometimes it was tough love, but we always understood that there was a purpose behind everything that they were instilling in us, everything they were teaching us to do, not to do. So we always knew there was a purpose. And so no, I felt love from both my parents. It was in a different way, but you always knew your parents loved you and wanted the best for you, and would do whatever they needed to do to get what you needed or to provide for you.
It's a different kind of existence when you've got that.
Yes.
That's advocacy on another level.
Yes.
Now, the athletic background. When did you first start playing sports, and what sport was number one?
I started playing sports as, first, second grade, but, at Bearden, when I went there, I started playing. We had competition, third and fourth grade, fifth and sixth grade teams, and so I started playing with the third and fourth grade team as a second grader, playing basketball. And so I played basketball. I ran track in high school and all, from grade school all the way up. I played softball, same. My favorite sport is actually softball.
Even still?
Even still. I love softball. If I could have earned, and back when I came out of high school, there weren't very many softball scholarships.
Right.
And, for me, my family, I needed to have a scholarship to get an education.
Mm-hmm.
And so basketball provided me the opportunity to do that. I could have gone on track, but I liked track, but I didn't love track. And so I chose to do basketball, and so that's kind of how I went on from there.
Would you say you were strongest at softball, though?
Oh, yeah. I think I was probably the best at softball.
Oh, man.
And, I don't know if you know the official Ira Willis, but he
do.
coached me in high school, and you can ask him. He tells people all the time she was a much better softball player than she was a basketball player.
So he can vouch.
He can vouch.
I'm sure I'll be seeing him in very, very soon as this season gets ready to kick off. Okay, now, did it come to you, the basketball, did it come to you naturally, or was it something that you had to work at? And the reason I asked that is because I was a late bloomer, and I was one of them that had to pound that pavement, and eventually I started to reap some benefits, but it wasn't quick, though. Was it quick for you?
Right. I would say it was quick, but I wouldn't say it was quick because, in growing up, I was always more athletic than the average kid. I was faster, I was quicker, and so I think my skills were just a little bit farther advanced than most because I would go out and compete with my brothers every day after school. We'd be outside on the dirt pavement playing basketball.
That's right.
And so, my skills were far more advanced. I played 6-on-6 in high school. So when I went to college, we're 5-on-5, and I averaged 30-something points in high school. So I go to college, and I'm thinking I'm feeling pretty good about myself, but still humble. And I get there, and it's not going as well as I'm thinking it should. I'm not playing the amount of minutes that I would like to play, and I even contemplated leaving that semester.
Really?
And
it'll test you like that.
My husband right now was playing football there, so he convinced me to at least give it a year. So I did, and I'm glad I did because what I learned was, it's so different 5-on-5 from 6-on-6. The angles, the passing angles. Now you're having to adjust to 10 people on a half court as opposed to 6.
Yeah.
So that was a big adjustment for me. But the longer I stayed there and learned, and then after a year, I'm just like, there was no way I was ready for this level.
Right.
But with time, I got there. So
I'm gonna back you up just a tad. At the high school level, what was, with you being a high school coach, you've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the eras evolve. And so we're at a different time now than we were when I was a kid, and even when you were a kid. What was coaching like when you were a high school student athlete? Did it look anything like it has to look today?
In some ways it does because, I think we still have some really good high school coaches here in Oklahoma that have been coaching for 30, 40 years. And
that's true.
Even though it's 5-on-5, the fundamentals are still the same. The disciplines, like a lot of the small schools, I think they have a system that they start when the kids are in like the third and fourth grade, and that system runs all the way through. So yes and no, it has changed in some, but depending on the particular coach, some of it has still remained the same. The biggest thing I see that has changed is, the girls are playing more in the summers, and it's almost a year-round thing now, whereas back when I played, I didn't even know there was AAU and
right.
things like that. So I go to college, and two of my college teammates who are my age or we're freshmen, they played AAU because they were more closer to the Oklahoma City areas where they were more exposed to it, where I was in like a more of a rural country school and never heard of the organization. So I think that's the biggest thing is just the exposure. There's so much more exposure.
It's a whole lot to grasp too. I was talking to talking to Coach Simpson about it a couple months back. It's like, it's almost a must for you to play this game year round, because if you have an off switch, that's gonna set you back a couple miles. But what college did you go to? Where'd you play your college ball?
I went to East Central in Ada, Oklahoma.
Very familiar. Okay, so can you remember the moment where you knew, okay, this is a different level? Meaning, what was it, day one of workouts, day one of practice? What was that come to college moment, like, oh, I'm here now?
I think it was just the arriving part, not so much the basketball, just being away from home, being on your own, having to make those decisions, that was probably the biggest light bulb that came to me was, oh, I'm actually here and mom and dad's not here. I've got to wake up. Not that they ever woke me up, but you just got to do everything by yourself. And so that probably, once I arrived on campus and started unloading all my things to go into my dorm room, I think that's when it really sunk in that, hey, this is real.
Roommate,
yes.
whole new norm. Okay,
Yes.
so what you talked a little bit about your trials and tribulations early on from a basketball standpoint. Did you feel the support that you needed during that time to get through that rough patch, or was it all you just having to fight those demons in your head?
I think it was myself because my coaches and my teammates were encouraging me. They always felt like I could have the potential to be so good if I could just catch on, grasp what was going on. So I had the support of the team and the staff. It was just me, I think there again, I think it was just me being accustomed to playing all the time and not getting that much playing time as I wanted.
Right.
But, there again, with time, I understood that I wasn't quite ready for that level at that particular time.
Early on, did it tug at your ego a little bit?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think if you're a competitor, it
It's
does.
got to bother you.
Yeah.
You remember that moment to where that light bulb coming on moment, like, okay, I think I'm starting to get it. Was it a moment or a game or a moment in practice where it's like, I think I'm going to be all right?
It was a game. We were playing, as a matter of fact, I remember it, we were playing Okemah Christian, and our point guard had gotten in foul trouble, and so coach put me in, and I played well, and just things started to click, and I thought, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like, and I had to tell myself, at that level, I shouldn't have to play the entire game, or I'm not supposed to play the entire game. And I think that was my mindset going in, that, I needed to be playing all the minutes, because that's what I did in high school, So that was a moment that, I realized that, okay, if I'll go in and play hard for whatever amount of minutes coach needs me to play, that's my role. That's what I need to do for this team.
And now that was your freshman year. What was the sophomore year like? Did you have a bigger role, more minutes? Maybe you're in the starting lineup now, up in rotation. How did it look?
It was much better. I started my sophomore through senior year from a point guard standpoint, so I was a leader, had to embrace a lot of criticism because, as a point guard, you're supposed to get them in everything that we're supposed to do, and they're supposed to run it.
That's true.
And if they don't run it, then coach gets on to you, And so that, I had to embrace that. And just as, that's my role. I'm the quarterback out there. I'm supposed to be the coach on the court. It's my responsibility to get them in the offense and to, execute it the way he's expecting. So, but I embraced that role because that's what he needed me to do. And, I had the respect of my teammates to do that, because they knew that I was capable of doing that, and they expected me to do that.
And it sounds like you embraced it too. One thing I've said a lot and heard a lot as a coach is this particular phrase. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It says, listen to the message, but not the tone, right? Were you ever comfortable or uncomfortable as a leader, as a player, having to have that uncomfortable conversation with one of your teammates because we're in the heat of battle? Listen, this is what I need from you. You ain't giving it to me. I got to turn it up with you. Were you able to do that? I struggled.
I have, and I didn't realize I was doing it until somebody pointed it out to me. I actually had a nickname in high school. My nickname in high school was Snarl.
Ooh.
Because I would snap at people at crucial times, but in a respectful way.
Right.
But they knew that once I did that, there was a point behind it. There was a purpose behind it because I didn't do it very often. I mostly just played and led by example,
Sure.
But yeah, there were times, and I remember I didn't do it myself, but me and two of my teammates, we had a 6'4" kid that came in, and we're super excited to have a 6'4" kid at our level.
Oh, yeah. That's a rarity.
And she gets there, and she can't catch a ball, and it's just going through her hands, like
Dropping dimes all over the place.
Yeah, and so we have a freshman that's, she's a freshman, but she's pretty darn good, and so we corner her in the shower one night after the game and say, listen, you got to step it up because
Right.
she's not getting it done, So I didn't have to do that by myself. But
Good deal. By committee, that's that
Yes.
village. Now, who polices the police? When a lot of times when you're a lead dog, like it sounds like you were, one of the better players, if not the best, nobody's perfect. So every now and again, you may need to have that jolt or that kick in the butt. Were you able to receive that too?
Oh, absolutely. Because the people, well, I say that, if it comes from people that I respect and
Sure.
that I felt like were playing the game as hard as I did, I would welcome it. Even to this day, if I'm not doing something that my assistant feels like it's best for the team or that we need to make adjustments, I'm the first one I need to hear a different voice, and I'm willing to listen because I want to do what's best for the program and the team. And so yeah, I had two teams, the two that helped me corner the freshmen. They would hold me accountable on certain things and things of that nature because they wanted the best for the team, and they knew that if I wasn't playing up to par or doing what I needed to do, they knew I would be willing to accept some guidance.
I think kids run from that sometimes. I know what my mind frame was as a high school student athlete. I was one of the leaders, but I still wasn't comfortable being confrontational with my guys. And if I'm honest, the way I'm able to break it down now is I really wasn't trusting them to be able to bounce back from it. I'm like, okay, is our relationship going to be salvageable after I have this moment? But now I know I was just tripping. But now, once your college career ended, how soon did coaching become a possibility? Did you always know you wanted to get into it? Or?
I did not. When I went to college, I wanted to be a math teacher.
Hey,
And
that's my kryptonite, by the way.
got there and, started taking some of those classes, those calculus classes and things like that. And I thought, this may not be for me.
Yeah, let's
So
reroute.
then I went into athletic training and absolutely loved that because I knew I wanted to still be involved with athletes, but just never really considered myself as a coach. And then as soon as I finished playing, my head coach said, hey, what do you think about being a grad assistant for us? And I'm like, okay, I can do that because I wanted to start working on my master's and so that's kind of how it started. I just started doing that, and it just kind of led to me doing this to this day, Yeah.
Look at you, starting from the bottom, literally, and working your way up.
Yes.
So at that point, if I'm in the ballpark, you had to be maybe 22, 23 years old at that time.
Yes.
How was the communication thing again with girls that are pretty much in your same age category, but now you're on this side of the bench and they're on that side? Was it tough?
It wasn't tough because I think, especially with the returning ones, they respected me as a person and as a player because they knew there again, if I spoke something, there was a purpose, or I wasn't just talking to hear myself speak. There was a reason for me to be talking, and so it was a smooth transition. And even in the recruiting process, and I think it has a lot to do with how you present yourself and carry yourself, and how you talk and treat to people. You earn that respect, and in turn, they'll give it back to you. And so I never had an issue with any of the kids thinking that I did know what I was talking about or anything like that. They just kind of listened, and I had the support of my head coach, and they respected him and trusted his judgment. So,
were you given the room to grow, so to speak? And what I really mean to ask that in a more specific way, did you have what were the parameters on you as a grad assistant, or did they just let you do your thing, how you need to do your thing?
He just let me do my thing because
Oh,
I
good.
had played with him, so he knew me as a person, and he
Great.
knew me as a player, and he just knew that I respected him and his philosophy and what he was trying to establish there. So he just let me do what I needed to do, and there were times where he wanted me to be more vocal, and so that was I had to grow with that because I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, But there again, I think it's just the way I would pull a kid aside and visit with them and talk to them and do it that way that I eventually gained their respect, and it was just a smooth transition.
And eventually you got your master's, right?
I did, yes.
What was
Yes.
the next stop after that? Did you stick around for a minute, or was it time to turn the page?
Well, I stayed there for 4 years. After I finished my master's and stayed on there for a couple other years. I lost the graduate assistant title and was an assistant for a couple of years.
All right.
In that time, my husband and I got married, and he was coaching football at Ada High School, and you know, he got an opportunity to go to a bigger school, Moore High School, and
Yeah.
I wasn't real crazy about it because I'm not real good with change, and I was comfortable, and I didn't want to go coach at the high school level.
Oh,
you know.
really? That part I didn't
not.
know. Okay.
I did not. And so I thought, okay, for him, well, let's try this. Let's do this. And so he was an assistant at Moore High School. I became an assistant over at Westmore High School. And I worked for a lady called Jo Tasuda, and she was I learned so much from her. Very organized practices, very organized person, a big disciplinarian. I learned a lot from my college coach, but every time you change jobs, you learn something, whether it's good or bad. And I just learned so much from her, and I started to really appreciate and think, okay, I can coach at this level, and so I was with her for 2 years, and then I became the head coach at Moore High School myself, and it's just kind of been that way ever since.
I think every coach that starts, well, maybe not every, maybe that's not a fair word, but the vast majority of coaches, when they get started, their vision is like, okay, whenever I get my program, when I can run my show. But how good do you think you would have turned out to be without those steps as an assistant? Do you think you'd have been good enough to jump right in the driver's seat as a head right out of the gate?
There again, coming from a college, you think that, but having gone to, that was the best thing I ever did, was go to a high school and learn from her. I sit back and I think, yeah, I was ready for that job, but then I step back and I'm like, no, there was no way I was ready for that job. I actually interviewed for a job and was disappointed that I didn't get it, but I was still, I think I had one more year at Westmore, and I went back and did that the second year, and I sat back and I thought there was no way I was ready to be a head coach, at that time. So, sometimes your mind plays crazy things
That's true.
on you, but no, going to the high school level and learning under her was probably one of the best things I ever did.
What was the first blunder that you made as a head coach? Like when you look back, like, oh, I really mismanaged this situation. Whether it was something from a personnel standpoint behind the scenes, or if it was a bad judgment call in a game.
Ooh, that's a tough question.
And see, I would imagine you don't make too many of them these days.
I can't, I really can't think of a blunder.
Well, how about this one?
Okay.
Can you remember one of the first most notable differences from being an assistant to now you're a head coach? Like, I'm responsible for this now? Dang, I didn't have to worry about this a year ago.
Well, it's just, there's so many responsibilities that a head coach has, as far as, because I think a lot of people come in thinking, especially when you teach also, you have the teaching responsibility, you have the classroom responsibility, you're monitoring the kids' grades, you're making sure they're taking care of their academics, you're making sure they're being, positive role models in the hallway.
Bunch of hats.
I think those are probably the biggest things that I had to make the adjustments with. Besides the X and O's, is just there's more. I tell people all the time, I think X and O's are probably about 20-30% of my job. Everything else is, trying to teach my young women how to be successful women, confident women, and being positive role models in the school and in our community. And it's just you want to watch your demeanor on the sideline, because you want to be the same person that you are in practice, that you are in a game, because you don't want to be somebody different that your kids aren't anticipating.
They'll call you out on it.
Yeah, and so it's just just the little things, I think, like that. But I think the biggest thing is just things away from the court.
Were you able to assemble your own staff right away?
I was, when I went to Moore, I was able to bring one with me. I
Hey.
retained one and was able to bring one with me. And she was actually an assistant coach over Westmore with me. So we knew each other. So it was a smooth transition. So that was nice. It's always nice to be able to bring in somebody that you're comfortable with, because you have to have people that are loyal and that you can trust.
Sure.
Because, there's, especially nowadays, there's just so much social medias and just, parents and, it's just, you have to have people that are loyal to you and that you can trust.
Ulterior motives too. That I mean, I would put all of that you just listed under that umbrella right there. Now, you've had at least one of your same assistants for a long time, for as long as I've known you. How important is that from year to year? And the reason I asked that is because I heard actually a good friend of mine, Josh Berry, he's the head girls coach over at Sand Springs, and he said, man, I would like my staff to have, if maybe not full of them, but a few that aspire to be head coaches.
Right.
And he told me his philosophy behind that was he didn't think he would ever have to beg them for that work ethic and for that hunger, for that drive. To that, you would say what?
I would agree with him. And, when I first came here, I brought an assistant with me, but I knew she would eventually be a head coach because I knew she wanted to be a head coach. And I always told myself, if I could find a head coach that would be willing to be an assistant coach, I would love to do that.
You'd be winning.
And so I got lucky, because my assistant that I have now, this will be our 13th year together.
Crazy.
And she was the head coach at Enid, and was just had a lot of parental issues. It just took the fun out of the game. So she had resigned at Enid, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give her a call and present it to her and,
See if that
just
fire's
see
still
what
burning.
happens. Yeah. So I did, and she and her husband came down and we visited, and about 2 weeks later, she's like, "Okay, I'm in." I'm like, "No way," And so it's been great to have an assistant that has been a head coach because, she's ran practices. She's had to deal with discipline. She's, had to deal with academics. Everything that, that I do, that a head coach does, she's already experienced it. So when I hire you, I want you to do your job.
Sure.
I'm not hiring you to babysit you.
Right.
I trust you. There's things that I want you to implement. There's philosophies, I want you to follow, but I want you to do your job. This is what you want to do. And every year, when a good position comes open, I'll ask her. I said, "Hey, are you interested?" And she doesn't have the desire to do it anymore, as from a head coach perspective, but she absolutely loves being an assistant, and she's great at being an assistant coach.
That's so big because it sounds like your ego was intact. Like, listen, I'm not thinking about none of that. You're good. I want you if you want to be. Wow, that's amazing. There. Okay, so how long was the Moore run before you transitioned to?
I was
the
at
next
Moore
one?
for 3 years.
For 3 years, okay. Was it just time to go at that point, or did somebody come knocking that you couldn't deny?
Well, somebody came knocking. Well,
Gotcha.
After my second year at Moore, my first year, it was a rebuilding process, and after my second year, Brad and I had some friends that lived in Denton, Texas, and they kept saying, "Oh, come on, you guys need to come to Texas, you need to come to Denton." And I considered it my second year, but I was pregnant with my daughter and just didn't feel comfortable making the transition at that time. And I say that, and we wanted to go to Texas because my husband always wanted to, Texas football.
That's right.
Football.
It's a big
and
deal.
My husband always wanted to experience that. So I thought, but it just wasn't good timing. So after my third year at Moore, they came calling again, and I thought, okay, maybe this is God's telling me something, that they're still reaching out to me, because I'm like, we're in Oklahoma. I know they're qualified coaches in Texas. Why are they reaching out to me?
Sure.
So we did that. We chose to go to Denton, and we were there for 2 years, and it was a good experience, but we just never felt at home. And I don't know if we had stayed 4 years, 5 years, if we had would have felt any different, but at that time, it just didn't feel good. And I'm a very family-oriented person. Both of our families were here in Oklahoma. The kids and I would get to come home on weekends, but Brad never did because of football, and,
Yeah,
and
he
you know,
was-
we'd have to leave early on the holidays, and I just didn't like that.
Didn't dig
I
it.
wanted my kids to grow up around their cousins and grandparents and things like that. So we had some friends that were coaching at Jenks at the time, and Jenks was, after the 2 years at Denton, Jenks had a couple of openings, and we pursued those, and we were very fortunate to get them. So we came back to Oklahoma and have been back ever since.
Now, see, I think that's in my memory bank. I remember the Jenks run. That's the beginning of my knowledge of you. And you ended up coaching one of the girls that I grew up with, if I'm not mistaken, Tia McGee. Did she play for you during that time?
You know,
Or
Tia
did you
came
miss her?
in the year after. I think she came in the year after I left.
The year after you left.
Yeah, a
Oh,
couple of
man.
years after I left.
So it
Yeah,
was close. We were right
I
up there on
know.
that
I
line.
sure wanted to coach her. I did.
She was a
Yes,
treat.
Yes.
Well, how was that Jenks experience? How much different was that one from Moore? Because you're at the same level, Class 6A, you're in Oklahoma again, and I'm pretty sure you've learned a thing or two from your Texas experience, and now you're better.
Right.
How was it?
You know, I look, you know, I see the success that I had, but I didn't go in with the mindset of, oh, we're going to win state championships, or I went in with the mindset of, this is a great opportunity for me, especially being an African American. It's a huge opportunity for me, and I just wanted to go in and teach what I knew. And so I get there, and they already had the championship mindset because they had just won it the year before. But you know, they always had really good girls tradition, and that was one of the things that attracted me to them initially. And so so I just get there and I just instill my philosophy and with their mindset, because they would do anything to win. I mean, they just wanted to win. And so they bought into my system and our style of play. You know, we up-tempo, a lot of ball pressure, a lot of pressing, full court and half court, and they were very receptive of my philosophy, and it just kind of fell into place.
Did you have a veteran group?
I did. You know, I think they returned 3 starters from that championship team, but had about 3 or 4 that played quality minutes the year before. And then when I got there, they said, Coach, there's a couple girls we want you to talk to. They really need to play basketball, but they didn't play the past year. And I said, okay, I'm willing to visit with them, you know. So we talked, and they came and played. One was like 6'1", and the other one was like 5'8", and they just came in, and they were great role players. I mean, they just did whatever we needed them to do, and so that helped tremendously as well, because it gave us additional depth and gave us additional size.
So it wasn't a tough sell.
It wasn't. No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Maybe they just needed a little push, as we
Yes.
all do sometimes.
Yeah.
And I always ask that veteran question, because I can only imagine how tough it is when you take over a new program, how tough it is on those kids, because it's like, listen, if they were really close to the previous coach, which if they got to the mountaintop, they had to be, I could understand how they may be a little stiff and not wanting to say, okay, I'm in right away. So it was a short process getting them to buy in?
I think so, because and you know, it's funny you say that, and I think there again it goes back to my tone and my style, because you know, I just talk to him just like I'm talking to you. Very seldom raise my voice. If I did, it was for a reason. And I actually had one of the assistants, I think we played 3 or 4 games into the season, and she said, can I tell you something? And I'm like, sure. She said, you got to get meaner. You got to get tougher. You know, these girls, they're used to people yelling at them. And I said, no.
It's not me.
I said, that's not me. That's not my style. I said, they're going to have to adjust to me. And I said, it may take us a few games, but, you know, we're winning. We're probably not winning as much as she would have liked. But I said, no. I said, this is who I am. And I said, I won't change. If I have to scream and yell at them to get to play for me, then I'm not at the right place.
Right.
You know, and so I just remained who I am, and they eventually caught on, and they knew that, you know, because I can be very stern,
Right.
you know, with my tone, and so, you know, when that happens, they know that it's time to get serious, or you know, it's a priority at that point. So
I've always seen that, and you've explained it a couple of times since we've been talking, but coaching against you during my Muskogee era,
Yes.
I would always look, whether this was a good habit or not, I was able to come out of coach mode and just be a fan. I was like, yo, this is an outstanding atmosphere. And I'm looking down there at you. I'm like, well, if I didn't know what was happening around you, I would have no idea what's going on in your mind, but you kept a poker face. But your girls played hard, though.
Right.
And to me, those things didn't always match. So I want to ask you this about your leaders. I think a lot of times coaches make mistakes, and I've made this mistake too, trying to create a certain type of leader out of a girl or one of my boys whose personality just naturally wasn't that big. Right. But I wanted them to be the rah-rah guy because they were the best. And they worked hard, but they were just worked by example. Right. How do you prefer your leader be?
I want them to be themselves. You know, I'm not a rah-rah person myself, so I can't ask somebody to do that because that's not who I was as a player, and it just wasn't my style. And if that's not their style, if they're not comfortable doing that, then I'm not going to pull them out of what they do best. Just, you know, we'll find somebody else to do that, you know, because, you know, I tell our kids all the time, everybody has a role in our program. Even if you're on the bench, you have a role to help the team have success. And if it's the 10th person on the bench or the 7th person on the bench, that has to be that person. That's your role, and we need you to do that, you know, because, you know, I have a young lady right now, she'll never be that role. She will never be that person. That's just not her.
Right.
But when she says something or she claps her hands, the kids know she means business.
Oh, she doesn't do this all the time.
Exactly. So no, I want them to be themselves because, you know, I just don't want them to get out of their comfort zone and do something that they're physically or mentally not comfortable doing.
Now, did you get a title at Jenks?
I got 2 titles.
Got 2 titles at Jenks. Talk to me about those runs, because, and when I say talk to me about it, what I really want to know is how soon do you know you have a team that could go get it done? Is it like, okay, we're on to something here? Was it early, or was it a pivotal point in the season?
With that particular group, I felt like we had the talent to do it. And the thing I always look at is, naturally the opposing teams, and I just think that, especially in girls basketball, in the game of basketball in general, there's so many possessions in basketball that could just change the complexion of the game in a split second. And in girls basketball, you don't find very many girls team-wise that will lock in and guard, or they have 1 or 2 people that are really good, but there are 2 or 3 that we really don't have to focus that much energy on. So I knew early on that we had the potential to be a state champion, because I'm looking at all the other 6A teams at that time and just kind of comparing our roster and depth and what do they have that we don't have, what do we have that they don't have, and I just didn't feel like teams could match up with us with our depth and size. But in saying that, my first year, it was the first round of area.
And which year was this?
It was my first year in 01.
01, okay, gotcha.
01. I have 2 kids go down with ACLs in that one game.
Oh,
one goes down right here,
that's a nightmare.
About half court, and the other one goes down in the paint. Nobody's around them.
Ooh.
And so
they say those are the scariest injuries. Yes. With no contact.
So, you know, I began to think at that moment, and I see my kids' eyes, can we do this? You know? So we go back and we change our philosophy. We start full court pressing everybody and just speeding the game up and we're just wearing people. Our philosophy was to wear them down. You know, if they're going to beat us, they're going to have to,
be in shape.
Yeah, exactly. And that worked for us. You know, we played Tahlequah in the championship, and I want to say they were undefeated or only had just lost 1 game that year, and they only played 5 kids. And I told my kids, I said, we're going to run them to death today. Right. And we did. You know, by the 3rd quarter, they were exhausted. I kept telling them, I said, they may stay with us the first half. Don't panic. They may stay with us in the 3rd quarter. Don't panic. But the 4th quarter is when we will separate. And that's what happened. And so that was a really strange run, but so rewarding because of what we had to endure and what we had to go back and change a lot of things. My 2nd year, I still haven't watched that game. We lost to Westmore at Stillwater in the championship game up there. A game we should have won, but I just didn't have a leader to step up and say, we can do this, you know. And so we end up losing to them, I think, by 6. My 3rd year, we come back and we win the championship and that, and we just, you know, we do what we're supposed to do, and we win the game. And so It was some really good runs there.
It sounds like it.
Yes.
I got a few questions I got to ask about that era. That's major. I think I knew of just the 2001 one for some reason. That's how, I guess I'm a pup, you know. But here's the deal. Now, you seem to have always been grounded and known exactly what you were capable of and maybe what you weren't. Was there any validation that you felt after becoming a champion the first time?
No, not really, because you know, me as a person, I never go in thinking about myself. I always go in thinking about the kids, the girls, what they want to accomplish. And when they tell me what they want to accomplish, then that's my vision, and that's what I run with. I never think about, to this day, I don't think about myself and my accomplishments and things like that, because it's never been that for me. When I entered this profession, and you know, even after the 5th year, or the 10th year, the 15th year, I never think about, oh, I haven't earned this, or I never think about things like that. And so it was never about validation or anything. It was just that I helped these guys accomplish what they wanted to accomplish.
That was enough.
Yeah.
That was gratifying enough. Did you ever fight, maybe let's say in the spring of that year, right after spring break is over, and you know you're still kind of riding high from this experience? Was it tough to refocus them or keep them fired up to do it again? Did you fight anybody getting full on you? No,
I didn't, because you know, a lot of the kids that there at Jenks at the time were multi-sport athletes. So a lot of my athletes went to soccer or track. So I only had maybe 7 or 8 in the gym, and they were you know, just focused on getting better individually. We always just talked about, you know, we're not going to worry about the team concept right now. We're going to work on things that you need to get better at. You need to get better at, and that's kind of was our focus. But a lot of my kids went to track and soccer.
There you go. And that's not always a bad thing.
Right.
I had to learn that. I had to grow into that, because at first I'm like, listen, I want my athletes year round if I can get them. But then after some of them that our personalities didn't necessarily go well together, wasn't a perfect fit, I'm like, okay, by the time March is here, I need a little bit of a break from you. And I know you need one from me too.
Right.
Okay, so now you're on the opposite end of the spectrum the following year. How difficult is that conversation going into that dressing room after you girls just lost in the final game? Like, you know you got to say something, but you know nothing's going to be soothing enough.
Right. You know, it was, you know, as I think as a coach, you have to be selective on the words that you say, because you already know they're hurting, and I don't want to make the wound any deeper.
Right.
So my thing was, you know, guys, you know, seniors, appreciate your hard work, you know, all the 4 years that you were in this program. You set the tone. Yeah, we came up short, but there's 14 other teams that would like to be in here where you are, and that's how we're going to look at it, and that's how we're going to leave it. Yeah, we're disappointed that we got the silver ball. I actually think the silver ball is prettier, but you know, we're you know, that senior class, I think they only lost 5 games their whole career. So
that's major.
Yeah. So you know, go out and you walk out of this locker room proud of what you've accomplished, proud that you've kept the tradition going, and that you've set a great example for the younger ones, and we, you know, we leave it at that. You know.
How long do you take from that point to get back in the saddle?
I'm ready to go the next week.
Next week?
I want to take, you know, I think spring break was that next week. I'm ready to go back, because I see what we have coming back, you know, and they're ready, because they were disappointed, and they knew, you know, I had a couple of juniors, they knew that, you know, one of them said, Coach, I should have stepped up tonight. I said, well, you got next year.
Yeah, we'll worry about that in the weeks to come.
Year. I said, just don't let it happen to us next year. And she said, oh, I won't.
See, that's probably the best part about that experience, is like, okay, now I shouldn't have to do any probing to get you guys ready, get that bacon sizzling, you know what I mean? So 2003, we're coming up on now, right? That campaign, did you just know it? Did you feel it early, like, we can get this?
I did, because, you know, we were so athletic. There again, we had depth, we had size. And so, and just the mentality was just so different. They were so driven to not let what happened the previous year happen this year. And so, so I think that year we only lost 2 games.
Got it done.
Yeah.
No suspense.
Yeah.
Was that your last year at Jenks?
It was my last year at Jenks, and then I went to the University of Tulsa for 2 years.
Didn't know that either. Wow. So now, did
did.
you just feel like, hey, I need a different challenge, or what was that about?
Well, it was, I had always had a goal to coach at the Division I level. And I knew that the only way I could get there would be as an assistant. And there again, I was never one of these coaches that wanted to move around. Definitely didn't want to move my family. So it was a smooth transition. All I did was change jobs. My family didn't have to move. My husband didn't have to change jobs. It was just a smooth transition right here in Tulsa. So I just felt like it was a good time, a great opportunity that I couldn't pass up based on all the logistics and everything that was involved with it.
What'd you learn?
Oh, I learned that. One of the biggest things I learned is they're just 18, 19, 20-year-old girls that need the same thing that high school kids need as far as mentorship, guidance, advice, fundamentals, footwork, all that. They still need the same thing that these kids do. We were just able to select who we wanted as opposed to just getting what you have at the high school level.
Having to play that hand that you dealt.
And I enjoyed the lifestyle of just being able to go in and, I was an assistant coach, and I also did the travel arrangements and food arrangements, things like that. So, as long as Coach she was really good, as long as we got our work done in the mornings, before practice, and then we just practice. And so I like that lifestyle, and I love to travel, so I got to go some places that I probably wouldn't get to go.
Right.
And, just experience the lifestyle of a college athlete. And I came away with tremendous respect of a college athlete, because people don't you have parents out here now that want their kids to go Division I.
Yeah,
well,
or else.
Yeah, well, Division I is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids that to this day. We want to find you the best fit. I don't care what level it is. We want to find the best fit that you could probably be there for the next 4 years and get an education. That's our main goal. But
for free if we can.
yes, but in going back to that, the lifestyle, those guys are up eating breakfast. If they're not in the weight room, they're in the weight room, go to class, eat lunch, go into the training room, get taken care of their practice, go to study hall. It's a full-time job. Mm-hmm. So I gained tremendous respect for college athletes that can manage their daily schedule and still keep their academics up, because, as you all know, Tulsa's no easy place to academically,
No cakewalk.
So I enjoyed that. It was a great experience, but I love what I do.
From an athletic standpoint, did it ever surprise you how much a kid coming in at that level didn't have, maybe from a fundamental standpoint? Like, wow, I expected you to be further along, but I guess let me meet you where you are, and let's bring you along. Did you ever have some of those?
Oh, absolutely. And, sometimes I would sit back and think, we actually recruited that kid? We actually signed that kid? Because I see so many kids here in Oklahoma that are better than that kid right now.
Right now.
And so, yeah, it surprises me, and I'm sitting there thinking, did they just have an amazing game that particular day that we were there, or that coaching staff was there for us to even, put them on our radar? But yes, I even before I went to Tulsa, I did a clinic. I was part of a clinic at Oklahoma State, and so I went up there and was demonstrating footwork and doing some things through the ladders, and we had JUCO All-Americans
struggling
there. Yes, I was so embarrassed.
Really?
Yeah. I came back and I told my kids, I said, this is why I push you so hard here, because I don't want you to embarrass yourself when you get to the Division I level or the Division II level. And I said, I know coaches' philosophies and things like that are going to be different than mine, but at least you can do some of the basic things that you don't embarrass yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was really embarrassed for that particular kid, because I thought, wow, she's been a JUCO All-American, is at Oklahoma State right now, and her footwork is absolutely horrible.
And that's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. that lets you know no matter how much the game changes, it stays the same in some ways. So how did the TU chapter end? Was it just time to go? Had you had enough?
Coach Miller was offered the position at the University of Colorado.
Oh.
And there again, I had no desire to go to Colorado. And so, I was in limbo and didn't know what to do. And the Sapulpa position came open, and in my heart, I wanted this position, but I also wanted to stay at the college level.
Right.
But I didn't know if whoever they hired would retain me. So
Sure.
I'm just like,
That's the business of
so
it.
yeah, so I was just in limbo. So I called a friend of mine who's FCA director here in Oklahoma, and I said, John, I need your help. I need some advice. So we talked. He listened to me for about 15, 20 minutes, and he said, you already know what you want to do. He said, you're going to be successful wherever you go. He said, you are. He said, so just make a decision and go with it, he said. And the minute I hung up the phone, I felt silly because what he told me was so simple.
Yeah.
But it answered my frustration or my confusion, and I knew immediately and once that happened, I chose to come here, and it's been the best decision I've made.
Isn't it ironic that a lot of times when we ask for advice, I'm guilty of this too. I'm searching, maybe subconsciously, I'm looking for somebody to tell me something in this eloquent way that I've never heard before. But it really comes down to something real basic.
Right.
But I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, man, well, I'm asking you to make the decision for me, but I
Right.
can't say it to you. Okay. And now, what year was that when you first got over here to Sapulpa?
2005.
2005. Okay, so now I'm sure that you coached at least one person I knew. One of my oldest friends, Holly Birmingham.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me about Holly B. How was she whenever she was here playing for you? Because was it just her senior year, correct?
Yes.
2006-07.
Yes. It was a challenge at first because Holly was accustomed to doing things the way Holly wanted to do
That's a
things.
fact. I'm looking at the camera when I say that.
So it was a challenge, and I think Holly had I won't say a problem, but she had an issue trusting people. And I think once I built that relationship and she learned to trust me, she knew that I had the right intent for her to be successful. And so once she bought into our system, she flourished. She absolutely flourished in our system, and she's what we needed because we didn't have a point guard with her skills, because she could handle the ball, she could shoot, she could get to the rim, and she's still one of my favorite to this day. She comes by about 2 or 3 times a year, and we still text and keep in contact. But yeah, I think initially she was didn't buy into the team concept, and then once she did that, we kind of flourished from that point.
Now, no disrespect to anybody else that I leave out, but I do remember Holly, and I remember Alicia Brewer on that squad. Talk about that kid. I didn't get to know her as well as I knew Holly, but we did share the court on a few occasions, just hooking it up and playing. And she was playing with the guys, and it was like nothing.
Very talented young lady, and I don't think she ever reached her potential at the high school level. Because I don't know if there was a part of her that always felt with her size that she would maybe hurt somebody if she played like she would with the guys, but she had an amazing career. But we would always tell her, and she would have some of her teammates would tell her, because she didn't have the best practice work ethic.
Right.
And they would tell her, if you would work hard and practice like this one over here, you'd be amazing. I mean, we tell her that all the time because it would be true. I mean, she could, whenever she set her mind, she could completely dominate the game. And I think one of her best assets was her passing ability. She would rebound the basketball, and she could throw from the block to block and be on a dime.
Was she a willing passer?
Oh, absolutely. She would much rather pass than score.
And we talking about somebody, 6'3",
Yes.
6'4"? That's a cheat code. And you always seem to get one of those, Coach.
But no, she loved to pass the basketball, and that was probably her best tool.
That year, you guys cashed in and got you another piece of hardware.
We did.
How was that run? If you can compare that one to the Jenks era, would any similarities, or was it altogether different?
It was different because our team was so dominant that year because we were in a weak conference. One of my challenges as a coach was keeping them mentally challenged every game, because we really knew when we stepped off the bus or before we got on the bus, we were going to win by 20, 25, because the conference was just not very strong. And so that was a challenge for me from a coaching standpoint, is guys, we got to go play to our potential. We can't play to the level, or don't just play just to win. You know, go dominate, set the tone, because although our conference isn't very strong, you still have other teams that are waiting to knock you off.
That's a
you
fact.
know? So that run was probably more challenging from that standpoint. And, you know, we play well, get to the championship game, and we actually did not play well the first half. We were down by 12 at halftime.
That had to be the first time all year.
It was. And so we go in the locker room, and, you know, Tatum Beer had moved back over here from Broken Arrow. And I specifically pointed her out. I said, you did not move back over here, because she played horrible. You did not move back over here to leave like this. I said, you have got to shake off whatever's bothering you, if you're, you know, and go play. And I think when she started to relax and play, everybody else did too, and we ended up winning by 12. But yeah, we did not play well the first half of that game. We played Mustang at Lloyd Noble, and I didn't recognize my team. Yeah.
What do you attribute that to? In anything, or is it just something that just sort of happens?
Well, I think like you just mentioned, I think we're having such success that Mustang just jumped out on us, and we didn't know how to respond. I mean, it was just like, wow, what's going on?
We're getting hit in the mouth right now, ladies.
Exactly. And our theme actually that year was we were in the boxing ring. I can't remember what it was, but the poster theme was. It had to do with boxing, and you know, one of the things I talked to him about at halftime is we're supposed to throw the first punch and keep punching. And I said, they've thrown all the punches right now. We're not fighting back. I said, we got to fight back. And I said, you have 2 quarters to do it. I said, and it can be done, but you know, it has to be we take one possession at a time, and we eventually, I think by the end of the 3rd quarter, I think we were either ahead or within 2, and then we just kind of gradually finished it off in the 4th quarter.
Started closing that gap, and it started feeling more familiar.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I'm gonna fast forward. You coached your daughter, which
I did.
You know, some people may look at that as commonplace, but I think it's sort of a rarity. You know, but I've always seen and been told by parents who have done the same thing that you have that it's very hard to find some gray area, meaning you're either too hard on them or you're not hard enough on them. How was your experience being able to coach your daughter for 4 years?
Right.
Well, that's only the 4 years I saw. I would imagine it was more than that.
Me and my assistant started coaching Bryce and a couple of her other little friends when I think Bryce was in the 4th grade. And I remember there's a couple of incidents that I really had to get stern with her. One was that year, her 4th grade year, we were planning a tournament just in a little school outside of Sapulpa, and she wasn't having very much success. And she was starting to cry on the court, and I'm just like, oh no, we can't do
we ain't
that.
Doing
So
that.
my assistant she was the head coach that particular game. And I said, will you take her out of the game? So she took her out of the game, and I took Bryce to the end of the bench, and I said, Bryce, we do not cry in basketball games. I said, you have got to suck it up and go play, and you know, your frustrations may be overwhelming you right now, but you got to let it go. But I said, you do not, you know. And so she got herself together and went back out and did well. And then there was one time in practice, I didn't think she was having one of her best practices, so I kicked her out of practice.
Ooh, I like that.
And,
hit that reset button, baby.
And so she went in the locker room, and I said, hey, you can't show up to practice like this. I said, you're one of our leaders out on the team, and I said, I don't feel like you're giving us your best effort right now. And I said, you stay back in here, and I said, whenever you're ready to come out, I said, you come out, but I said, you can't come out like you just were, you know. And those are the only 2 incidents that I ever had to address her. You know, sometimes I think maybe I wasn't tough enough on her, but then I look at her now, and the last 3 or 4 years of college, and I see what we were teaching her and demanding of her flourish in the college games, because I began to see she was doing so much for us at the high school level. She was playing the best opponent on the opposing team. She was leading us in assists. She was our point guard, advancing the ball, coming down, having to get us set up in our sets, then go play a different position. She was leading us in rebounding. She was always in a position to help, you know, on defense. And so she was just doing so much for us that when I saw her freshman year and sophomore year at Missouri State, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I think her job's a little bit easier here than it was in high school, but
Weird, huh?
yeah, but it was a great, and like when we practice was over, I was mom. And I can honestly sit here and say there was probably only 2 or 3 times in the 4 years that I coached her here at high school that I actually thought she was my daughter in practice. She was just another player that we were trying to help develop and get better, and help our team get better. And, once we get, because I have so many friends that coach their daughters, and the relationships weren't what I wanted my relationship with Bryce to be. I wanted to be, when we walk out this gym door, I want her to know that I'm mom, and we're not going to talk about basketball unless she initiates it. There were a couple of times on the way home, I'd say, okay, Bryce, I have a couple questions for you. During this particular situation in the game, what would you have done different? And then she would tell me, and then I'd say, okay, this is what I would have liked to see you do. But once we walked in that door at home, I was mom, she was Bryce, daughter, and that was it. It was great.
Did that come naturally to you, or was that a concentrated effort? Like, okay, I gotta focus in on making sure that line is definitive between the two.
No, it was conscious effort. I mean, because I just, I always knew I wanted to coach her, and I always knew I wanted to be a mother. I wanted her to know that when I'm here, I'm coach, but when I'm away, I'm mom. And we don't talk about basketball. We watch it, but we don't talk about it. I always wanted her to have the separation.
And if I were to ask her who's the good cop and who's the bad cop between mom and dad, who you think's the good cop?
Dad's the good cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah. Dad's the good cop.
That's all right there. Well, you've been doing this for quite some time, and you've reached some heights that some coaches have yet to, and some, unfortunately, won't get to that point. What keeps you coming back year after year? What keeps that bacon sizzling?
I still have a passion for the game. I still love the game. I watch basketball all the time. People think I'm crazy.
So happy that it came back tonight. So happy.
Yes, because I'll on the way back from games on the road, I'm probably watching Bryce on my iPad. I get home. I have TV in my bedroom. I've got a Fire Stick. I'm watching somebody. I've got somebody on TV. I've got the iPad on. I'm just constantly watching the game because I love to learn, I'm still in plays from, and I just have a passion for it still, I still like to see my kids grow and accomplish goals, we're still striving for state championships here.
That's a beautiful thing.
I walk in that door every day and I'm driven to make that happen. I still want to do those things, and I still have the desire to do those things.
Got about 3 or 4 more things I want to throw at you, okay. Coach. This year's team, tell me about this year, the 2020-2021 version of the Sapulpa Lady Chieftains. What's your diagnosis, without giving me all your secrets?
I really like this team. We have 4 returning starters back from last year's team. Have about 4 or 5 girls that gained quality experience last year. I have a freshman that I think is going to give us some really good minutes this year, so I'm super excited about the team. We've got size, we've got athleticism, we have height. The biggest thing is they love each other, they like each other, they love to hang out with each other. After practice, they're sitting over here in the corner or up in the stands watching the boys practice, or they're running to Quick Trip and they're coming back. I mean, they hang out in the locker room all the time. And I can hear them from my office, and they just like being around each other. And I think that's one of the reasons we've been so successful the last couple of years, is because they truly want each other to have success. We dropped down to 5A this year, and so that's going to be a different challenge for us because we still play our 6A schedule or 6A conference and tough tournaments, and so we're super excited about that. But as I told them, I said, our biggest challenge is going to be to not listen to the outside.
Yes.
Because everybody thinks that, you've already got the gold ball.
You got it in the bag.
Yeah, and I'm like, no. If I remember, we lost to a 5A team last year. So I said, and I have such respect for our Oklahoma coaches because we have some really good coaches. And like I said before, I said in the girls' game, through my experiences, obviously if you're not making baskets, you're not going to win games. But if you're not, if there's just so many things that we can do that to capitalize on mismatches and things like that. If you got the right personnel, that anything can happen that particular night. And of course, you always got to stay healthy.
Are you sure?
And with this COVID, you never know what lineup you're going to have.
Oh my gosh!
But really excited about the opportunity that our program has this year, and hopefully we can fulfill that.
You were blessed with a transplant, for lack of a better term, a couple of years ago. I think it was somewhere between 2014 and 15. Mm-hmm. A young lady by the name of Chelsea Dungy came over here and joined your program. Talk about that process. Was it an immediate good fit? And here's a player that's got a lot of notoriety. People know the kid's name before she walks into the venue, and then she's coming into your house, and people know you too,
right.
and it's your show. So how was that integrating her into what you already had?
It was really good, because I think they had respect for me as a person and me as a coach before they came here, and I had the same respect for them. And I knew she was a kid that was striving for the best. She'd already played for USA basketball and won a gold medal. She won a state championship at Preston, and at the time she was committed to Oklahoma State. So, I knew she had high expectations, wanted to play at the next level, and so initially it was I think it was more of an adjustment for her, because our style was so different.
Right.
The game is a lot faster, and she's playing against kids that are just as athletic as she is now, and
not 2 or 3A anymore.
Right. And we're playing man to man, because they played a lot of 1-3-1 at Preston, and so I think the biggest adjustment for her, and we even had this conversation, was the pace and just the physicality of this level as opposed to playing at Preston. And so, and my kids, they knew of her, and so, they were very welcoming, because they knew how much better she could make our team.
And
but
she did.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think that the biggest transition was probably more so for her than us.
From a practice standpoint, let's say you guys are fresh off of a big-time win the night before, an emotional victory, or maybe you guys are on a hot streak. You guys have strung together a few wins back to back to back to back. What does that practice look like the day after you've had one of those big-time wins? The girls are feeling good about themselves. What do you do to reset them?
Well, if it's a Tuesday game, Wednesdays are pretty light for us, because I like to use that as a recovery day.
Right.
We do a lot of stretching, just a lot of shooting. We go over everything just to make sure everybody's on the same page, and try to get them out a little bit earlier than typically. But it's more of a recovery day for us, because our season's long, and at that particular time, and most of the, if we're referring to that team or even last year's team, we're only playing maybe 6 or 7 kids, and so you want to keep them.
And preserve.
Yes, you want to keep them fresh. It's a long season. And just, and then pick up again on that Thursday or for a Friday game. After a Friday game, of course, they have Saturday. And I'm not a weekend coach.
Me neither.
So we don't practice on Saturdays or Sundays, so they have Saturday and Sundays to kind of recover. But sometimes we'd have open gym on Sundays. But I try to look long term, and I feel like our kids work really hard in practice, and they play hard. So I want to reward them with, a lighter day, just to kind of say, okay, yeah, I appreciate what you've done, your hard work. Now let's recover this day.
Now we got to flip the coin. How tough are you to deal with after a loss?
I'm pretty much the same. So there's probably been a few games where I've been really upset with my kids, but for the most part, I'm the same. And I don't really talk to them very much, because I like to go back and look at the film, because I see things different after I watch film than I see live. And most of the time, it's not as bad as Coach thinks it is when I watch it on film.
Now, do you watch it that night, or you wait till the next morning?
No, I watch it that night.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I watch it that night, because I want to make sure I say the right things, or I address the right things, because like you mentioned before, sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you present it, or the look on your face, or your body language. And I don't want to send mixed messages, so I just, we talk a little bit, about things, and I'm never satisfied, and they know that by now. But
constantly moving the bar.
Yeah. I said, I'm never satisfied, but, we could have probably done this, this, and this better, but we're not going to talk about it very much. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Ordinarily, let's say minus COVID, let's say the world is the way we've always known it to be. What does a regular work day look like for Darlene Calip? What's your day job, and then what all of your duties, gearing up, getting ready from the moment you get up out of bed and start your day all the way until practice?
Well, first of all, I'm up here at probably about 6:15 a.m.
There you go.
Get my workout in. I coached our 9th grade team. They come in at 7:30, practice them till about 8:30. Go over, teach. I teach from 8:50 to 11:35.
What are you teaching?
I teach fundamentals of technology.
Oh, hey, there you go. This is quite the change from math, right?
Yes. I do that, have lunch, then I come over here, get things ready for practice. Make sure the practice schedule is ready to go. Make sure, the kids have all their water. Everything's, I'm an organized freak, so everything has to be in place. And then we practice from, kids usually get in about 2:05. We'll go till about 4:30ish, 4:45, and then I'll hang out here till probably about 6.
This is gym rat code.
Yeah, yes. And plus my husband, he usually doesn't get home till probably about 7:30 or 8, so there's no point in going home sitting at home. I'd rather be doing stuff here.
That's right.
Laundry, organizing, whatever, just making sure everything's, locker room's clean, things like that.
Has it ever been tough for you to delegate responsibilities, being somebody who's very particular and organized about the way you go about it?
It has, and each year it gets easier, or I delegate more. Up until about 4 or 5 years, I still called all the inbound sets, out-of-bound sets, things like that. Mm-hmm. Now I delegate those to my 2 assistants, and I give them some responsibilities as far as scheduling buses, food for the kids, organizing. We do a lot of fundraising or community things to get our kids out in the community.
For sure.
Doing all that, ordering
and that's huge.
Team gear. Yes, yeah, we spend a lot of time and giving back to our community, because the community here loves our program and supports our program tremendously. So, like, we're on the 8th, we're going to have a berry Christmas where fans are invited to bring a bear, and then we donate all the bears that we collect that night to the care community that distributes them in the community to underage kids and things like that. So just things like that.
Outreach, baby.
Yes. So, but yeah, my day's pretty full. When my head hits a pillow, I'm out.
Yeah, and you've earned that, right?
Yes.
How regular have you been able to keep the grand scheme of things in light of COVID? Because you seem to have all your ducks in a row, and we all have had to deviate to some degree. But how regular have you been able to keep it?
We have been really actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a few. I would say the only deviation that we've had from our schedule is when there's a kid. We have a gym over in the high school, and when a kid over there tests positive and it has been in that particular class, then it shuts down the gym. Mm-hmm. So we have to adjust gym schedules and things like that. But for the most part, everything's been really smooth. We talk to our kids about it every day. About in the classrooms, try to get up and move around every 7 to 8 minutes. Be careful who you're sitting by if you're not 6 feet apart, things of that nature. But as far as what we do, we've got the sanitizer, we have the wipes, we do all that. Everything else is pretty much my sister and I try to do everything that we can so that they don't have to do anything.
Sure.
And just make everything smooth for them.
Kids just show up. That's what we need.
Exactly.
Here's how we'll wrap this thing up, Coach. This is arguably my favorite segment of our podcast. I call it All Due Disrespect. And where I'm coming from with that is, I'm pretty sure that if you dig deep enough in your archives, you can think of a game that you lost during your coaching career that you should have won. And you felt like that then, and you probably still feel like that now. So if you had a chance to go back and run it back and see if you can change the course of history, which team would that be? What game?
It would be the championship game of our 08 team. We're playing Union at the Ford Center. We lose by 1 point. And so I can go back and think of 2 or 3 things during the course of that game that we should have done different. The biggest thing is we didn't make free throws. And I knew it was in the 4th quarter, one of my best free throw shooters, when she misses both, I knew we were in for a dogfight. I mean, I knew. And the game was seesaw back and forth. One of my best kids had gotten in foul trouble early. Lacey didn't show up like we needed her to show up, and I still haven't watched that game. I still haven't watched that game.
2 games you haven't gone and watched back yet.
Yeah, but that particular game really stands out to me because, you know, we had beaten Union twice that year by 15 plus both games, and we just allowed them to dictate the tempo of the game. They were more physical than us, and we just allowed them to push us around that particular game.
It's always hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Well, Coach,
Yes.
this has been fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I've
yeah.
enjoyed it. I appreciate you giving me your time over this holiday week. Much respect to you and everything you've done, and well wishes moving forward. And hopefully we'll have a season and we can get an end to this season.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed this as well.
Until the next time, my friend.
Yeah.